Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome to this week's Sunday Feast program on behalf of Sri Kishore Kishore and Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much for joining us virtually. A few quick announcements before I turn it over to tonight's speaker, His Grace Chaitanya Kishore Prabhu. The first is, and we'll hear a little bit about this in a few minutes, one of the largest festivals of the year is happening this Tuesday. For those of you that receive the temple emails, you should have some information available. For those of you that aren't on our list, we're celebrating the appearance day of Lord Sri Krishna. That's this Tuesday, August 11th. So there's a combination of on-site as well as virtual festivities planned. There is going to be live darshan of the deities on Tuesday from 12 p.m. noon until 7 p.m., but you are required to register in advance. So we're trying to be sensitive to both the scale of this event as well as the realities of the COVID-19 situation. So for in-person darshan, please register online. You can do that through the temple website, iskonchicago.com. The Midnight Arti will be live streamed on our YouTube channel as well. That's the ISKCON Chicago Kishore Kishore YouTube channel. So please stay tuned for that, as well as sponsorship opportunities. If you would like to support the festival, the event, there are a variety of sponsorship opportunities, and you can learn more on the temple website, iskonchicago.com. The keynote will be presented at 10:30 p.m. on Tuesday, August 11th, and that's going to be given by His Holiness Romapad Swami. The following day is Vyasa Puja of ISKCON founder Acharya, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada. And that's going to be live streamed on both Zoom and YouTube. And that starts at 10:30 a.m. and goes through 1 p.m. So that is an online only event. Again, Tuesday, there is opportunity for in-person darshan for registrants. Wednesday, August 12th is online only. So please take advantage of these opportunities. For those of you who would like to make offerings for Srila Prabhupada's appearance day, you are asked to join the Zoom call and you may have the opportunity to read your offering to Srila Prabhupada. Finally, I'll turn it over to Chaitanya Kishore Prabhu, who's going to be setting the stage for this really high season of festivities that we're approaching. And he's going to be talking to us with a curiously named Sunday feast called Scurryfunge. So on that note, I'll turn it over to you. Thank you so much, Prabhu, for agreeing to address the Sunday feast audience. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Ishlan Prabhu. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. Hope everybody can see this.
Yeah, it's visible now.
Okay. All right. So welcome to the Sunday feast of Sri Kishore Kishore Temple. I would like to thank Ishlan Prabhu for giving me this opportunity, to speak on this just before the big festival, which is kind of the biggest festival for us here at ISKCON. The Krishna Janmashtami, right? The Krishna consciousness movement. I'm going to speak on, today evening, I'm going to speak on the topic called Scurryfunge. Really speaking, I really didn't understand what this meant. By grace of Yeshwaran Prabhu, I was able to understand what this is, what exactly it means. So I put it up here. So for those who are like me, who don't understand much of English, I put this on the. So this is the meaning. It says it's a middle old modern English meaning to hastily clean up when a company is coming over. Means somebody is coming over, and this happens to us every time, right? Usually our homes are quite dirty, and when somebody is coming over, we hastily start cleaning up everything so that our place is clean to welcome them. Nobody wants to come to a dirty place. The same thing applies to the Supreme Lord. So when we are trying to invite the Lord, we don't want to keep our heart and consciousness unclean. So what this sets the stage of today's talk. What I'm going to present is some of the principles that are very important with respect to preparing our consciousness, with respect to cleaning our consciousness, our heart, in order to welcome the Lord just before this big festival, the Janmashtami festival. So I'll be talking about the advent of Lord Krishna. Now in the Bhagavatam, I'll be talking from Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th canto, first chapter. I will just give a very high level overview of this chapter. It's a very beautiful story. The chapter itself is titled as Introduction, Advent of Lord Krishna, introduction to that. It talks about the events that happened just before the advent of the Lord. Okay. And I will in parallel, kind of connect these some of the principles with the chapter 4 of Bhagavad Gita. Since I've been reading that a lot, I will connect that to come up with a conclusion with like 4 takeaways, which will help us in our progressive Krishna consciousness. To prepare us for this festival. Right. So remember this verse, Scurryfunge is hastily clean up, quickly clean up when somebody's coming over. Okay. So everybody knows, Lord Krishna's advent every year is a big event all over the world, just not in ISKCON, but many other organizations, they celebrate this event with a lot of festivities. By far, Lord Krishna is a very popular figure, whether people understand him as Supreme Lord or not, but he is favorite of all. For sure, it has been all these events. I mean, the Janmashtami specifically is very famous, especially in India. Right. So in the Bhagavad Gita, 4th chapter, 7th and 8th verse actually explains the purpose and why and when does Lord Krishna appear. Yeah, why does he come to this world? What is the need for the Supreme Lord to come to this world? Right. So in this verse, the 4th chapter, 7th verse, he mentions when he comes. Right. He says, "Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata abhyuttanam adharmasya tadatmanam srijamyam." This is a very famous verse, quite often commented. I mean, quite often quoted by people, very who are not even acquainted with the Krishna conscious movement or not. But this word, what it means, this word dharmasya glani, in following slides we will discuss what it means actually. But in general, at a higher level, whenever there is some irregularity or there is some discrepancy in following the principles of dharma or religion, as English dictionary translates that. So principles of dharma which an individual should follow. Whenever there's some discrepancy, when people are not following properly, Lord Krishna comes. He advents to establish those principles. That is one purpose. Okay. And then the next verse, the 8th verse of the 4th chapter, talks about his 3 purposes for which he comes. Right. One purpose we already said, to establish the dharma, which is said here in Dharma Samsthapanarthaya, the last piece of this verse. The first part of this verse talks about paritranaya sadhunam and vinashaya cha dushkritam. So there are 3 purposes. One is paritranaya sadhunam, that is to please his devotees. His devotees are always hankering to see him, to have association of the Lord. So for that purpose he comes. The second purpose he says is vinashaya cha dushkritam. While he is here, he makes an endeavor to kill all the demoniac forces, get rid of the world of the demoniac forces. And so that's another purpose of his advent. And in this particular verse, Srila Prabhupada very explicitly explains that the second purpose, vinashaya cha dushkritam, is really a secondary thing. He didn't have, Lord does not have to descend to do that. He throws out, he sends a hurricane, or he sends COVID-19, all dushkritams are dead. So there is no need for him to come here, or there is no he could just, he's sitting in everybody's heart. He could just send some disease to that demoniac person, and he's dead. So the main purpose why he comes, though, where Prabhupada points this out, is for the paritranaya sadhunam, for the devotees. He comes here specifically for the devotees, yeah, to help or to please the devotees. So he basically comes for all of us who are attached to Krishna, who are loving Krishna, and who want to see him. So, so these festivals of Janmashtami is one of the opportunities where we can engage ourselves in understanding and hearing about him. Take some time out of our daily schedule and hear about him to get attached, more inclined towards his pastimes. Now, in the scriptures in Srimad Bhagavatam, it also mentions a particular time, when he comes. This is the beauty of our Vedic scriptures, that they give perfect timings of when Krishna really appears. He doesn't have to adhere to the schedule, but he does. Just he tells that he comes on the 20th manvantara in every day of Brahma. Now, every day of Brahma spans across millions and trillions of our years, human years. So, as per current situation, Brahma is in his midday. He's like, uh, it is his midday for him right now. So Prabhupada used to very emphatically say that Krishna just appeared 5,000 years ago. And for us, 5,000 years may seem a very long time, but when we look at the eternity time span, 5,000 years is not just a blink. So it was real, very recent. So we are very fortunate to have Krishna appeared in this yuga when we are here. And this happened in Dwapar Yuga, just the yuga before this, right? Now, another verse that comes to mind when advent of Krishna is associated, and most often this is very much uh, quoted by who talk about advent of Krishna, is about his activities, right? So what happens when we hear about his activities? So everybody knows from reading Srila Prabhupada's books that goal of life is to attain our Satchidananda Swarup, which is basically understand who we are, from like we are the soul and not the bodies. If you read Srila Prabhupada's books, you will understand this principle very, very clearly. Um, Remember our eternal relationship with the Supreme Lord. That is one of the so this is a chit uh, understanding. Chit means knowledge. So to understand our relationship with the Supreme Lord, and then engage in that relationship. Once we understand we are part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, we engage in devotional service to the Lord by going back home, back to Godhead, serving Him, and experiencing the bliss of associating with Him. Right? So that is our Swarup. That is our eternal position, Satchidananda Swarup, or a Roop, or original form, constitution. So the goal of life is, or the purpose of the entire Vedic literature, as Krishna himself mentions in the 15th chapter, is Vedasya Sarve Rahameva Vedya. He says, the purpose of all the Vedas is to know me, right, or know Krishna. So what does he offer? So if we have to attain that goal, he gives us a very nice offer. He says, Janma karma chame divyam evam yoveti tatvata tyaktva deham punarjanma naiti mameti sorjuna. He says in this verse 4.9, he says that one who understands my janma, which is my birth, and karma, or my activities, uh, they are divyam, they are transcendental, they are not of this material world. One who understands this in truth, tattvata. So understanding Krishna in tattvata means to understand that his birth and his activities are not of this world, they are transcendental. When we hear these pastimes of the Lord, some of them feel very fantastic. They feel out of this world, but that's what he's trying to tell. These activities are transcendental. It's not possible for a common human being to do. So we understand the actual position of the Supreme Lord, yet he performs such sweet activities that he attracts our hearts, right? So Krishna is telling this to Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita, that one who understands this principle, that my activities and my birth is divyam, or transcendental, he will not take birth in this world again. That means he becomes liberated. He attains his constitutional position by going back home, back to God. So, such a wonderful offer that Krishna is presenting before us, just simply by trying to understand, and that he offers us a lot of help too. If we just try to understand his janma and karma in tattva, or in truth, from a bona fide spiritual master, then um, we can achieve our constitutional position, right? So having said that, giving this a small introduction to what we are going to say in this presentation, what I wanted to do is just give you a breakdown of the 10th canto, first chapter, which is entitled as Advent of Lord Krishna, right? This is in Srimad Bhagavatam. Those who have Srimad Bhagavatam sets, please do have a look at this. It's a very wonderful chapter, and it's a very opportune time at this point of time, just 2 days before Janmashtami, to go through this and to just prepare to or think about him. You have to think about Krishna's advent, be ready for his advent on Tuesday. And also Prabhupada has very brilliantly explained the entire 10th canto, which talks about all the pastimes of Krishna and Krishna book. So all these books are very, very valuable. So this 10th canto, first chapter, Advent of Lord Krishna, this is just a breakdown based on my understanding. Other devotees can have other ways of breaking it down, but just for the purpose of this presentation, I have kind of to explain one principle from each of these pastimes. So if you see it, it has 69 verses in all. The first 16 verses talks about King Parikshit eagerness. This is the whole Bhagavatam is a discussion between Parikshit Maharaj and Sukdev Goswami, right? Everybody knows that how Parikshit Maharaj was cursed to die in 7 days, and Sukdev Goswami came at that point to instruct Parikshit Maharaj, and Parikshit Maharaj left everything and he sat, without eating, drinking, to hear about the Lord. So now about 4 or 5 days has passed. It is in the 10th canto where just before this chapter, the 9th canto, end of the chapter, Sukdev Goswami explains the entire dynasty of Yadu Vamsha, or the Yadu dynasty, and he mentions about Lord Krishna. It mentions about how Lord Krishna did his pastimes in Vrindavan and all that. So this kind of this kind of triggers a curiosity into the heart of Parikshit Maharaj. Now we should understand Parikshit Maharaj is connected to Pandavas, and he has heard the glories of Krishna. He has himself felt the glories of Krishna because Krishna himself saved him in the womb. So he is naturally very much attracted to him. He's naturally very eager to hear about him, right? So the first 13 verses are his inquiries. So he has heard about many of the pastimes of Lord Krishna. So now, just for further clarification and for benefit of everybody else, he questions Sukdev Goswami. Why Krishna appeared in a jail, how he was transferred from Mathura to Gokul. Why did Balaram, he was born to Devki and he was taken to Rohini. He's asking all these questions just to increase the ecstasy for everybody, even for Sukdev Goswami and for himself. And hearing this, the last two verses, 14 and 16 verses, Sukdev Goswami praises Parikshit Maharaj. Any saintly person who hears about these questions, they become very happy. They become very happy uh, to glorify the Lord, and they get this opportunity to talk about Krishna. So they are very much happy in that sense. So Sukdev Goswami expresses the happiness and thanks Parikshit Maharaj, glorifies Parikshit Maharaj that your inquiries are very beneficial to everybody, and your eagerness is very nice. So there will be nice discussion about Lord Krishna. The next set of verses, 17 to 26, talk about Mother Earth's distress. So we'll go into the more details about this, what happened and how Mother Earth was feeling the pain of all the demoniac kings. There's some certain principles that we will talk about. It's a story about that. The next verses 27 to 35 talk about the prophecy, that Kamsa heard. Kamsa was the brother of Devaki, and he heard that he's going to be killed by the eighth son of Devaki, and how he reacted and what he did. That's what it talks about. The next set of verses from 36 to 55, Vasudev, who's Devaki's husband, they were newlywed, and how he tries to pacify Kamsa of not committing this sin of killing his own sister, and how he talks about some transcendental knowledge. Very, very informative section. And the last section of this particular chapter talks about Kamsa's cruelty. He actually goes ahead and kills Devaki's children and imprisons his own father. So at this point, this chapter ends, and the next chapter begins, which is the follow-on chapter where demigods come and pray to the Lord. So we'll not go into that, but this chapter ends at this point, right? So We'll take the first section, the first 1 to 16 verses. Um, Now, very interesting verse in this chapter, the verse number 4. Prabhupada has given a very long purport to this verse, but this verse has a very deep meaning, and it talks about what is the right medicine for conditioned soul. Now, I mentioned how Parikshit Maharaj, he was naturally very inquisitive. He was naturally very eager because he was a devotee from birth. Of course, but had a very pure heart. He has been hearing about Krishna from his childhood. He has felt the protection of Krishna at the birth, and he was naturally very much inclined to hear about Krishna. So, in one of these verses, he says to Sukadeva Goswami that, hearing about Krishna, I've been fasting for so long. I've not slept. I've not eaten, but I don't feel any. I don't feel any tiredness. I don't feel anything. I feel ecstasy. I feel happy. I don't feel weakness or anything. Now he's at so this is the mood in which he's asking. So much eagerness, right? But that is not possible. I mean, for us, even going, sitting through one Bhagavatam class is a challenge. Usually people fall asleep. But he's without eating, sleeping for 5 days, 6 days, continuously hearing, right? So, so this verse is very, very informative. It says, "Nivritta tarshay rupagiyamanat bhavam shudauchotra manobhiramat kauttama shloka gunanuvadat puman rajet vina pashubhanat." Uh, what it in essence talks about, this word nirvitra tarshay is very much emphasized by Prabhupada in his purport. He says nirvitra tarshay means one person who has no longer interest in the false and temporary glorification of this cosmic manifestation. That means he has no longer interest in anything in the material world. That is a person who is nivritta tarshay. Right? And when so for us, we may not be at that level, but um when we hear the glories of Krishna from a mouth of such a person who has no interest in glorifying anything but Krishna, no interest in glorifying anything in the material world, this particular Krishna Katha acts as a medicine, the right medicine for our conditioned heart. Yeah, it helps us to overcome or become little transcendental to this material world. Yeah. So that's why kind of bold out there in the red description of the Lord, a right medicine for the conditioned soul undergoing repeated birth and death. But how should that be done? This should be happening from a Nivritra Tarshay, a person who is no longer interested in false temporary glorification of cosmic manifestation. So when the speaker is like that, and even the person who is hearing is like that, if the person hearing is also Nivritta Tarshay, the discussion becomes totally divyam or transcendental. Right? And when such a discourse is happening, the speaker, the hearer, and the general people who are listening, they all become benefited. They all become purified. Right? So that is the level of Krishna discussion which we should have. And this particular last line kind of says that Krishna Katha is so sweet that everybody will be interested. Even if we are conditioned, at least we will hear about Krishna's glories. One who is the one person who cannot hear is one who is butcher. It says Pashubhnath, a butcher, or one person who has no heart to hear. This word comes in Ishopanishad also. It's called Atmaha. So person who are very much involved or engrossed in material life, they are killing their own soul. Yeah, that's what it says. So those are people who are interested in the mundane topics. They are killing their own self. They are not very much interested in hearing about Krishna. Okay, so this Nivritta Tarshay is very important. The speaker and the hearer, and then probably everybody is benefited. Now, for us, we are so fortunate to be in contact with the movement, with the ISKCON. This ISKCON movement was started by Srila Prabhupada, founder Acharya, and we are so fortunate to be in his association. Even though we didn't personally meet him, but we have his lectures, his morning walks. So we already have a Nivritta Tarshay person who can make us transcendental, right? If we make an endeavor to connect with him on a regular basis. if we make an endeavor to listen to his lectures at least once in a day, make a point, maybe, I would say, every devotee of ISKCON who's serious must make it a point to add this particular item in our sadhana list, to always hear, or at least hear one lecture or one morning walk, at least one word from Prabhupada. So we can connect with him. So we already have such a person, so why not take advantage of that? Only why should we give away such a great opportunity when we already have our Srila Prabhupada who can give us this information through his Vani? And what will that do? Once we hear this from a person with that conviction, that faith, even though he's repeating the same thing again and again, if we just keep hearing that, it will cut through all our illusion, right? It will give us clarity of purpose. There wouldn't be any confusion of practicing in Krishna consciousness. There won't be any lapse in faith. We will understand the philosophy in very, very practical terms. There will be a lot of inspiration and enthusiasm, because if you hear about Srila Prabhupada's life, there's a lot of inspiration. You can right away understand how Krishna is helping Srila Prabhupada in each every step of his mission. And our sankalpa, or our determination to practice Krishna consciousness and give this to others, will also increase. The entire moment that Srila Prabhupada constituted, he wanted us to give it to others, as we practice ourselves and then give it to others. That was his entire endeavor. So the takeaway is Srila Prabhupada is there. He is perfect. This person who can give us nivritta tarshair, person who is no longer interested and can give us this transcendental knowledge with a lot of conviction and faith. So why not connect with him? That is one of the things. So moving forward, um, once this section is done, in the next section, the 17 verse 17 to 26, Sukhdev Goswami moves on with his explanation of the story, right? So he says that at the end of Dwapar Yuga, this entire world was filled with a lot of demoniac kings. Now, the demoniac kings, they would um, they would basically create a lot of havoc, by destroying the principles of dharma and ruling according to their own wishes or own selfish desires. So that is what was kind of giving a lot of distress and pain to Mother Earth. Yeah. So she goes in the form of a cow to Lord Brahma, who is the chief administrator of this world. So he goes there. She goes there to plead to Lord Brahma to do something about this, this distress that she's feeling with so many demoniac kings exploiting the earth. But Lord Brahma understands that it is out of his hands. So he goes to the demigods, and all of them together go to Lord Vishnu. Now, when they have such a big problem, they approach Lord Vishnu. This Prabhupada explains this in purport how Lord, this particular incident proves that Supreme Personality of Godhead is Lord Krishna. Wherever there is a big universal problem, Krishna himself appears, right? And they have to go to Lord Krishna for a solution. And also they pray, these demigods and Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, they pray, they recite this Purushokta prayers on the banks of Kshir Sagar, or Milk Ocean. And Lord Vishnu does not appear, yeah, but he instructs Lord Brahma through his heart. So Tena Brahma Adi Kavaya. So he instructs Lord Brahma through his heart and informs him that he will appear in Dwapar Yuga, or in short time, as in the Yadu dynasty. And he also tells that all the demigods also should appear in the Yadu dynasty to help him with this mission, right? Now, Prabhupada makes a very interesting comment. He says that Lord Krishna, when he was prayed like this by Brahma and the demigods, was certainly very, highly qualified personalities. Yet Krishna or Vishnu did not appear to them. He did not appear to them. He communicated the heart of Brahma, and that's about it. But he's so merciful, Lord Krishna, that he came onto this earth 5,000 years ago, and gave his personal association and darshan, so that everybody gets a chance to see him. And he gave this opportunity to every common man to come and see him, his pastimes, or hear about him. We also have this. I mean, this is the mercy, the causeless mercy of the Lord. And that's what Prabhupada points out. Now, in this particular purport, of Srimad Bhagavatam, 17th verse, Prabhupada defines what dharmasya glani means. Right. So we already said that it's non-performance of the actual dharma as ordained by the Lord. But now Prabhupada gives more specific definition of what this dharmasya glani means. He says that when the residents of this earth become atheistic and godless, then they descend to the status of animals like dogs and hogs, and thus their only business to bark among themselves. This is dharmasya glani, deviation from the goal of life. Now, very important, there is another similar verse which appears in Bhagavad Gita. Says that dharmahina pashubhi shamana, which means a person who is not following any religion or any dharma, he is like an animal. And what animals do is they just fight with each other, right? But that is not the purpose of human beings. Human beings are supposed to have a higher goal in life, and when they don't do that, when they don't follow the principles of religion to achieve that higher goal for which this entire material world has been constituted, at that point there is a need for the Lord to descend, to advent, to come here. So that is what dharmasya glani, as we saw in the first verse, how Krishna says, whenever there is a dharmasya glani, I come to this world. And one important thing that we notice in this particular pastime is Mother Earth and demigods didn't directly go to Krishna, because that's not the process that Krishna really recommends, or whether he will not even listen to. What he wants is glorification of his devotees. So all these demigods, all the Mother Earth, everybody went to Lord Brahma, and they understood Lord Brahma should go and approach Krishna, and from his pure heart, he's requesting the Lord to come. This is the process, because Krishna, he may come and reveal to anybody he likes, but he wants that people respect, adore, and love his devotees, because his devotees are giving everything for the service of the Lord, and they don't ask anything in return. So this is his love, his unconditional love for his devotees. So Krishna speaks through his devotees, and we also should pray through his devotees. And in this day and age, Krishna appears as his holy name. One may understand, one may think, how do we relate to Krishna in this age? So this is his appearances through his holy names. All right, so moving on, the next set of verses is when. So now this incident happened where Lord Brahma was instructed by Krishna to the heart that I'll be appearing, so please go. So they go over to their respective positions. They take their birth in the different Yadu dynasties. All the demigods do, and now Sukadeva Goswami explains that how Krishna's mother, father Vasudeva and Devaki, they got married. They got married. So Vasudeva was the son of Surasena. Devaki was the daughter of Devaka, who was from Bhoja dynasty, all from the Yadu Vamsha. And there was a grand marriage that happened at that point, and they were going in a procession. So now, after the marriage, the bride and the bridegroom, they were sitting in a chariot, and Kamsa, who is the son of Devaka, Ugrasen, and he was a brother of Devaki. He was very affectionate to Devaki. He loved his sister. So he was sitting on the chariot, and he was riding the chariot for Devaki out of affection. And at that point, what happens is there is a proclamation happening from the sky. So demigods basically inform or give a prophecy. They say that Kamsa, you are a fool, because 8th son of your sister Devaki will be the cause of your death. Yeah. Now this is heard by everybody, and suddenly Kamsa, who was so affectionately riding the chariot, now becomes totally angry, and he basically takes out his sword, holds his sister's hair, and is about to kill her. Yeah, this is what he does. Right. So now, one thing we should understand, that death is the ultimate prophecy for everybody. Right? It's not that he got the message and we are not going to get the message. Anybody, this when death comes, nobody knows actually. So this is the ultimate prophecy for all of us. Yeah. So uh, we hear about in Bhagavatam two personalities who got this information of their death beforehand. Yeah. So one is Kamsa, right? The way this was proclaimed, he was given this information that he, eighth son of your child, I mean of Devki, will kill you. And other personality is Parikshit Maharaj, right? So he also was cursed by Brahmanasam that in 7 days you're gonna die. Right? So, but the reaction these two different personalities had to this particular prophecy was totally different. Yeah. Now Kamsa was ready to kill his own sister after hearing this prophecy that I'm going to die. And what did Parikshit Maharaj do? Parikshit Maharaj gave up everything. He sat on the bank of the river and listened to Bhagavatam, peacefully. The death also they or the they attained is was different. One died painfully, and other died peacefully. You know what is the difference? The difference is in their consciousness. They had prepared their consciousness in that way. A materialistic person is for him or her the death is like end of everything. So when they hear of death, when they think of death, it it scares them. It's fearful, right? Nobody wants to die. So much attachment, so many things around, so they cannot accommodate that. And the reaction that comes out is, I will do whatever is required to protect myself. Even if it entails killing my own kingsmen, brothers, sisters, whatever. So that is the difference. And Parikshit Maharaj, he always had a devotional attitude. He was ruling the earth on behalf of the Supreme Lord. So he never was attached to any of his possessions. So it was very easy for him to just give it up and sit down and listen to the glories of the Lord till the time of his death. So the choice is up to us what we want to do. Do we want to prepare our consciousness in a way which is synonymous to Parikshit Maharaj's understanding of things, or do we want to become what or stay like what Kamsa had, materialistic mentality. Um, so Kamsa had tried to defy, but Parikshit Maharaj was humble and accepted this prophecy as Krishna's mercy, and moved on, with knowledge. So the choice is up to us. So that's why one who wants to develop this consciousness of spiritual understanding, we cannot take things very lightly. We have to be very very prudent. As we the meaning of Scurryfunge means hastily. We have to hastily do activities by which we can clear our consciousness or make our consciousness pure. We cannot be lethargic in this matter. So next verses talk about Vasudev's action. So once Kamsa was ready to kill his sister, Vasudev comes into action. He starts pacifying Kamsa. He starts saying, all this. He gives a lot of knowledge to Kamsa. He tells him that death comes to everybody. Why are you so afraid of death? Um, you are not the body, you're the soul. Anybody is going to uh, people will laugh at you if you kill your own sister. Such a big personality with so much of strength is killing a sister who was so weak and like that. So he tried to pacify Kamsa a lot, but he was not able to. And finally he says that Kamsa, okay, if any children born of us, I will give those children to you. And knowing Vasudev's um, character, Kamsa agreed. He said, okay, I believe you. Right. So in this point, for us, when we are in this process of purifying our consciousness, this knowledge, the transcendental knowledge about the body, the soul, relationship with Krishna, is of paramount importance. Without this knowledge, our conviction, our faith is always challenged. Right. It's always challenged. The material world around us is designed in such a way, if you don't put an effort to understand this knowledge, it will automatically deteriorate. It will deteriorate. So there are some of the verses that Bhagavad Gita talks about, the fourth chapter, 39 verse. In this particular verse, Krishna mentions a person with little faith, a faithful person who is dedicated to transcendental knowledge. He who is striving to acquire this knowledge, and who subdues his senses. He works very hard to understand this knowledge. Such person can attain supreme spiritual peace. Yeah. So everybody is after peace, but everybody don't want to work for that peace. Peace is required. So that's faith is required. This endeavor to acquire this knowledge is required, right? And what happens to a person who don't pursue this? Like the very next verse, Krishna explains, a person who is ignorant, faithless, and full of doubts in the revealed scriptures. He does not attain God consciousness. And he says that for a doubting soul, there is no happiness in this world or in the next world. It's very significant. The three categories of people he's talking about. One is ignorant. Ignorant people are people like, they don't care. They are just enjoying their senses, like animals, basically. The other kind of people are faithless people. Faithless people are people who understand that there is God, but they don't care much. Either the atheist class also comes into this faithless people. They don't care for what they hear about everything going on, but they don't care for it. And there are people like practicing people like us, and when we are full of doubts, if we are full of doubts and if we kind of encourage our doubts a lot, of course we need to clarify our doubts, definitely, why not? That's the whole purpose of getting knowledge and discussions. But when our doubts choke our faith, that is the problem. That's what Prabhu Krishna is saying here, that when we become too doubtful, everything we doubt. Okay, so there are three categories of things. There are some doubts which will be easily cleared out by discussion, but there are some doubts which will come with maturity, which will come with time, with by practicing the process itself. Yeah, and there are some doubts which may not understand very clearly ever. This is the nature of transcendental world, because our intelligence cannot accommodate certain things that are written in the scriptures. But because the principles that we are following are true, and when we apply to our lives, we find them working. We should have that faith that yes, whatever is said is right? So that person who has so much doubts, and he said, right, don't believe your doubts, and doubt your beliefs. So if you keep doubting your beliefs, then there is no happiness for you in this world or in the next. This is a very emphatic statement that Krishna makes in this case. And for us, we are very, again, Srila Prabhupada has given us so much. There is a library of books, encyclopedia of books about Vedic literature, the wisdom, and very practical tips. If you read any one of Srila Prabhupada's books, it will give us the realization. It will sharpen our intelligence. It will keep us on track. So again, every serious devotee, sincere devotee, must make it a point to at least read, one page, one paragraph, maybe one verse from Srila Prabhupada's books to keep our focus and sharpen our intelligence, so we can cut through all the illusion that we are exposed to by the natural world around us. Right? So this is the transcendental knowledge Vasudeva is giving it to Kamsa. But Kamsa again, does not understand, and then he has to promise this: that whichever kids are born of me, I will give it to you. So the next section, 55 to 69, the last section of this chapter, then explains how Kamsa, Vasudeva and Devaki have their first child. His name is Kirtiman. Vasudeva, as he promised, brings the child to Kamsa. And Kamsa then says that, okay, you are very honest. He was impressed with Vasudev's honesty. And he says, okay, I don't have fear with this first child, so you take him back. You know, I'm worried about the eighth one. The eighth child is the one who is going to kill me. So just you take him back. At that point, Narad Muni comes, and Narad Muni basically instructs or kind of tells Kamsa about that how he was a demon in his past life called Kalnemi, and how Vishnu killed him in the last life, and in this life also he's incarnating as son of Vasudeva and Devaki, and how he's going to ask all the demigods to take birth in Yadu dynasty. So then Kamsa becomes angry. He becomes again angry, and he basically goes again to Vasudeva, Devaki. He imprisons them, takes away their child, and he kills the child. Like that, he kills their 6 children consecutively. It is said that every year they would have one child, and Kamsa would come and kill that child. Now this is very, very painful, very unheard of. Such a atrocity happening, um, for mother and father, even one child. If he is not alive in front of them, it is painful. It is extremely painful. Now, one can just imagine how Vasudeva and Devaki went through all this. They knew that Kamsa is going to kill all their children, yet they kept doing this service, of getting children, because they understood that this is the will of the Lord, and they knew that the Lord is going to come. So, as a service, they kept doing the sacrifice. They kept doing the service of getting these children and giving it to Kamsa, and Kamsa kept killing them. It was a painful experience, but as a devotee, they understood the purpose of the Lord, and for satisfaction of the Lord and good of the entire world, they kept going like that. So this sacrifice is very, very inherent for achieving anything, right? So even if you hear about Prabhupada's journey, Prabhupada made big sacrifices in his life to give Krishna consciousness to such a large amount of people. Now you see, there are thousand millions of devotees around the world who are following his teachings. So many different institutions of the ISKCON has so many different temples, farmhouses, farm communities, um, restaurants, so many different places where this principle, this Krishna consciousness spread, because Prabhupada made that initial sacrifice, uh, of coming at this old age to a Western country, enduring the heart attacks that he did, and spreading, and single-handedly spreading Krishna consciousness all over the world. So this principle of sacrifice is a universal principle, even in the material field. In our day-to-day activities, uh, anything that we need requires sacrifice. If you have to enjoy your senses also, you need to go out. You need to get a job, work hard, get some money, and then spend that money. Without sacrifice, there is nothing that we can acquire. Even third chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna mentions that the art of work is to work for Krishna, for the satisfaction of Lord. Yajnartha karmano yatra. Yagna means sacrifice. Yagna also means Krishna. Right? And then the fourth chapter of 31st verse, Krishna says, without sacrifice, one can never live happily, whether in this planet or in the next. That's why I'm saying, even in the material realm, sacrifice is such an important factor. So, what to speak of understanding the Supreme Lord or achieving transcendental spiritual realization? If you see, in Bhagavatam, it mentions there are different sacrifices for different ages, right? Different methods of God realization. In the Satya Yuga, it was meditation. People used to sit erect, meditate, and control their minds and senses, focus on the Supreme Lord for thousands of years, which probably is not possible in this age. The next stage was Treta Yuga, where they used to do a lot of yagyas, actual sacrifices, when the ingredients were there, pure brahmanas were there. So a lot of endeavor used to go in order to perform sacrifices. And then came the Dwapar Yuga, where they would do deity worship, grand deity worship with paraphernalia, with very pure substances, used to perform deity worship. But in this age of Kali, because of our condition of not being so smart and not being so spiritually inclined, Krishna has given some discounts. He has given us some concession. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu very mercifully has introduced this Sankirtan Yagya, sacrifice of Sankirtan, which simply involves chanting, dancing, and little service. Yeah, and hearing Krishna Katha. So it's a blissful process. Krishna himself mentions in the Bhagavad Gita, Susukham kartum avyayam. He says this process is pratyaksha bhagavam. It is realized by a person who is engaged in it, and it is susukham. It is blissful. Yeah. So a blissful process of sacrifice, which requires little bit of giving up some comforts that we are used to, um, will help us to endure and will help us to achieve this cleansing of our consciousness and prepare ourselves for hearing and adopting and absorbing this Krishna consciousness in our lives. So in summary, I just want to go through what we discussed. um, so how do we hastily clean up our consciousness? Scurryfunge before Krishna enters our hearts. Yeah. So first principle, by hearing about Krishna's birth and his activities, which are transcendental, which are divine. Yeah. And we will understand Krishna through Nivritta Tarshair people who don't have this inclination or to a false attachment to explain discuss about the worldly matters. So they are always transcendental. So Nivritta Tarshair. When we hear from them, we develop that inquisitiveness and we purify our senses to basically uh, make our consciousness pure also. Then we discussed how ultimate prophecy for everybody is death. Death is upon us. Death is upon everybody actually. So this is actually the ultimate prophecy of life. Everybody has in this current scenario, with COVID-19 going around in this world. Everybody is so much in distress. Everybody is losing someone or other. They are having this, some relative who is going through this pain. It is unforeseen and how things are happening. Um, but that's why this should kind of trigger a thought in all of us that death is inevitable and it can come anytime. Some people uh, they say that it's a very pessimistic view to always think about death. It is not like that. It's the Vedic literature is not trying to scare you or make you paranoid that your life is useless and you're going to die or something. No. So the idea is to be aware. The idea is to be uh, cognizant about our impending death, so that we can utilize our time in appropriate way with urgency of matter. Understand that in this temporary world, we need to strive for something higher, because we are not temporary. We are the souls who are eternal. So this is not a place for us. Death is very unnatural to us. So how can we get out of this cycle of death, birth, and disease, right? So that is the idea of talking about and discussing about death. But when we understand this, we want to increase our Krishna consciousness in urgency, in hasty manner, so that we can approach these processes with a more firm conviction and faith, without having doubts in our heart, which will put lethargy and which will kind of put on some brakes on an inner process. We would not go in for, right? And then knowing Krishna in tattva or transcendental knowledge, getting transcendental knowledge, knowing about Krishna's birth and activities in truth. In truth means in tattva. Many people hear about Krishna and many people talk about Krishna, but very few actually understanding. This is what Krishna himself is saying. He says this, Bahunam Janmanam Ante Jnanavanamam Prapadyate Vasudeva Sarvamiti Sa Mahatma Sudurlabha. He says, out of millions and millions of people, one may strive for perfection. And out of such millions of people who strive for perfection, one knows me in truth. It's very, very, very rare to understand Krishna in truth. Yet we have this opportunity by the grace of Srila Prabhupada and in the ISKCON movement, uh, and we should take full advantage of that. Right? And the last point that I wanted to make was, all of this will culminate when we put into action by performing Sankirtan. Sankirtan Yajna. Sankirtan does not just mean chanting and dancing. It also means practical service. It also means engaging with devotees, hearing about Krishna, doing some practical stuff which will actually uh, make us realize all that we are hearing and all that we are speaking about. So when we put ourselves in that practice of Sankirtan, which is the Yuga Dharma. Yuga Dharma means the dharma that is proclaimed or which is prescribed for this age of Kali, for this yuga. So when we engage ourselves in that, then that is that will give us realizations, and which will kind of form our conviction and faith. So with this, I would request everyone to please, take some time in the next 2 days to go through some of the books that Prabhupada has given, like the Krishna book, Srimad Bhagavatam 10th canto, from first chapter, second chapter. Wonderful, wonderful descriptions. Even the translations are so beautiful. And once and get absorbed in understanding the advent of Krishna, about Krishna, the birth of Krishna. That will make our Janmashtami very blissful, and will inspire us to pray in the right direction. Um, Thank you very much. I think that's all I had. Yashodhar and Prabhu, back over to you if there's any questions. I think we have 5 minutes or so.
Sure. Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you so much for that presentation. One question so far. You had talked about that doubts can overcome us to the point where faith gets choked. Some get handled with maturity and time. So do you have any guidelines on how to understand when a doubt is powerful enough to choke our faith versus just accepting that thing that maybe is a doubt will just go away through maturity, through application, through time?
Right. Yeah, that's a good question. So there are some doubts, but the nature of those doubts, right? And there are some doubts which keep coming back. So some of the doubts which are more philosophical in nature, they can be overcome by discussion with some senior devotees. But there may be some doubts which are coming from our previous impressions, or something that we don't understand about the activities of the Lord, how or when Lord performs certain uncommon activities. We may have some doubts. Why did Krishna do such a thing? Now, this you can see that in the Bhagavatam. Even when Parishit Maharaj is asking these questions, he's also asking these kind of questions. How come Krishna, took birth in Mathura, went to Gokul? How do all these things happen, right? And you see Bhagavad Gita, Krishna, Arjuna is asking all these doubts, which are now this concept of Bhagavad Gita, where Arjuna is in the battlefield, and he's having so many doubts. It is shaking up his faith, right? He is not ready to fight because he doesn't believe that this fight is appropriate, or that this fight with the relative should be done at all. He is he has totally lost his conviction. So these kind of doubts, which kind of shake you up, where they uh, where they make you feel that I don't know whether this process is right for me or not. These kind of doubts are really very dangerous doubts, which may choke your faith, right? You kind of lose your faith, uh, because if some devotee acted in some way which is which you didn't expect, you thought that, some people have this very when they come into Krishna consciousness, they think that all devotees that I'm meeting are pure devotees. And when a devotee acts in a way which is, which shows his conditioning from the past lives that he has been through, then you start having doubts, is this process kind of working or not working? So that kind of doubts may choke your faith. So what we should be doing in that kind of thing is have some mentor, talk to them, get some advice. Because when you see a senior person who has gone through this process, they have already battled all these doubts, you know and they have had this conviction, which can help you, and he'll help everybody, basically, when they talk or when they tell us, how to handle these situations. So there are some doubts which will come with maturity, as I said. But for that stage to come, you need to be faithful enough to continue the process, so that you can reach to that stage of maturity. So we need help, we need association, we need discussions with seniors. Whenever there is some doubt, we should not keep it in our hearts, thinking that will come out, when we become mature. Even if there is a doubt, even if we know that when we mature it will come through, we should still discuss this with others, it will kind of help us lighten our our heart, and it will give us some faith that this process actually works. Does it answer the question, Prabhu?
Yes, Prabhu, I think so. We're at time, but I wanted to thank you for breaking down that chapter so nicely and combining that first chapter of the 10th canto with Srimad Bhagavad Gita chapter 4. It was a really nice overlap. So thank you for that very thoughtful presentation
Thank you so much.
and for helping us to prepare our hearts, prepare our consciousness for Janmashtami coming up. And that's 2 days, which is plenty of time to clean up,
Sure.
I guess.
Yes,
Thank you so much, Prabhu. If you wanted to have a concluding statement, otherwise we can end.
No, I would just say, happy Janmashtami, and please try to create favorable consciousness before Janmashtami by, again, reading these books, Krishna books, wonderful book, especially the Advent of Lord Krishna. If everybody can read that, that will be great. Hare Krishna.